It has been 5 years since a comet collided with Earth, wiping out more than 75% of the population. The air is polluted by radiation. Earthquakes and electromagnetic storms happen often, forcing people to live in underground shelters. John lives with his family in a shelter in Greenland. He is an engineer and a scout who often wears protective gear to go outside and check the environment. One day, he notices cracks in the ground getting bigger. At the beach, he finds a crashed ship. Inside, he collects some tools and finds the bodies of the entire crew along with a notebook that has a drawing of a beautiful flower. Just then John gets a warning about an electromagnetic storm and runs back to the shelter in time. After decontamination, he is still shaken from nearly dying and goes to see a therapist. The therapist advises him to open up to his family instead of hiding his feelings. Meanwhile, his wife Allison attends a meeting of shelter leaders about the shortage of resources. Dr. Amina shares a discovery about a crater in southern France that could become a safe zone for living. However, that place is in the middle of a civil war in Europe. An earthquake shakes the shelter. The leaders notice the frequency of earthquakes is increasing, and they debate whether to rescue people who are sending distress signals. After a vote, they decide to send a snowmobile out the next day. Afterward, Allison finds out their son Nathan sneaked outside and scolds him because she is worried about John's health. John often coughs badly after every scouting mission. During dinner, John gives Allison the flower he found on the ship. When Nathan admits going outside, John gets angry and the boy leaves the table. That night, John and Allison try to relax by dancing, but Allison is still worried about her husband's cough. In his room, Nathan uses a flashlight to make stars on the ceiling, imagining he is looking at the night sky outside. The next day, John finds several cracks in the shelter walls. Meanwhile, the snowmobile goes outside and rescues a group of survivors. On the way back, the rescue team calls the shelter to ask permission for a second trip, because they had to leave some people behind due to a lack of space. Adam immediately objects, reminding everyone they don't have enough room or resources. Just then another earthquake hits the area and they lose contact with the snowmobile. The shelter shakes more violently than usual, throwing people and furniture around. Suddenly, several spots on the ceiling collapse in different rooms, trapping and injuring many people. Some debris falls on John's head and the dust makes his cough worse, but a friend helps him out of the living quarters. Alarms go off as the shelter shakes again and an explosion can be heard nearby. John rushes to the office to rescue Allison, who is also pinned under debris. He helps her up and together they go to find their son. They find him in his room with his mask on, but he is still having trouble breathing. John tells the family to pack as much as they can while he goes to find more masks so they can leave. People are panicking and running everywhere inside the shelter, but John manages to reach the supply closet and returns with several masks. Nathan immediately feels better, so the family starts looking for a way out. As the tremors continue, the walls begin to crumble. A desperate crowd gathers at the exit, which is only partially open. They cannot leave through that door, so John guides his family to the eastern tunnel. Unfortunately, they find the tunnel has collapsed, but since it is their only choice, John tells the family to crawl under the rubble. The shaking almost makes the debris fall on them, but they move fast and manage to get through the tunnel to the other door. John presses a button to open it and the powerful engine makes the room collapse faster. The whole family runs fast and gets outside safely. Survivors are running everywhere as geysers start shooting up. The parents lose sight of Nathan and run back only to find him helping a fallen Amina. The family leads her along as they run toward the beach, where survivors are climbing onto boats to try to escape. Too many people push and shove, causing one of the boats to tip over, dragging the crowd into the water. Some desperate survivors take the chance to try to steal Adam's mask, so Allison and John run over to help him. A man lunges at John and tries to take his mask before he and Allison pull Adam to shore. Only one boat is left, so John tells his family and some survivors to get on quickly. Allison wants to take as many people as possible, but the boat pilot points out that too much weight will sink the boat, so they have no choice but to close the door in front of everyone. The survivors outside cling to the boat until it takes off. Just then a huge wave appears and crashes onto the beach, killing all the survivors who couldn't escape. John's boat is thrown around by the waves, but luckily the pilot makes it through and they continue sailing safely. A few minutes later, John uses a device to confirm that the air quality here is good so they can take off their masks. Afterward, the group discusses where to go. Since Iceland is gone, they agree that the nearest destination is England. A few hours later, the boat stops working. John checks the engine and tries to fix it so they can keep moving. When night falls, Nathan is happy to finally see the stars. A few days later, the boat stops again because it runs out of fuel. The group has no choice but to ration their food and let the sea take them wherever it wants. After a long wait, the boat finally lands on shore. The group looks outside and is surprised to find they are in Liverpool. John uses his device to confirm the air is clean and says they should find shelter. But when they look down, they see part of the area is flooded. John takes an oar and starts paddling until the boat reaches dry land. The group steps off and notices the town looks abandoned. They see a few people on the street, so they follow them until they find a rundown settlement, where the locals are trying their best to survive. John notices many of them look sick, so they won't live long out here. John's group hears screaming and follows the noise until they come across a crowd protesting outside a shelter guarded by soldiers. Adam rushes to the gate and explains that his people are government officials from the Greenland station, so he requests emergency asylum. The soldiers ask to see their badges, but only Allison has hers, so she is the only one allowed inside. Adam starts arguing with the soldiers while the crowd becomes more agitated and a soldier shoots Adam dead. When a random survivor tries to rush in, he is also shot. The soldiers close the gate as sirens start to wail. Just then a storm appears in the sky and the crowd runs away in panic. Amina and John's family run to stop a truck and ask Obi to take them to London. Obi wants to be paid, so he lets them on board. After taking John's watch, the truck speeds out of town and narrowly avoids the storm. Allison holds Nathan to comfort him while Amina grieves Adam's death. Obi explains that people are desperate and will kill for food. A few hours later, the truck stops in the middle of the forest to rest. Obi smokes a cigarette and shares that he came to England from Nigeria 12 years ago, but he doesn't regret it. John asks if he knows anything about the situation in France, but Obi says that the area is too dangerous and thinks the crater story is fake. Suddenly, they hear a rumbling sound and see chunks of comet debris falling from the sky. Everyone quickly hugs a tree just before the debris flies over their heads, destroying the tops of the branches. The wind picks up strongly, but the group holds on tight to avoid being blown away. Obi says the truck is all he has and runs to try to save it. However, the debris starts crashing into the ground and one piece kills Obi while also destroying the truck. After the debris shower ends, Amina and the family gather their bags and any useful items they can find in the truck and continue their journey on foot. They finally reach London and knock on the door of a very large building. A slot opens and Mackenzie points a gun at them, but she immediately lowers it when she sees her old friends and lets them in. Then she gives them a tour, revealing that the building is a nursing home, so all the survivors here are elderly. Mackenzie explains she managed to seal off the area and the generator keeps the air filtration system running. The group relaxes with some food and drinks for dinner. John asks about the crater, and Mackenzie says she has heard rumors but doesn't know if they are true. Screaming and gunfire can be heard on the street and Mackenzie confirms that London is no longer safe. Late at night, Allison tries to sleep but keeps hearing John coughing in the bathroom. When she looks at the sink, she finds blood. John tries to say it is just a normal nosebleed, but Allison doesn't believe him, so John reveals his secret. A doctor in the shelter told him that the bleeding is a symptom, meaning he only has 6 to 8 weeks left to live. Allison is devastated and wants to stay at the nursing home to spend John's final days in peace with the family. However, John refuses to die there and instead wants to find a new home for his family so he can close his eyes in peace. The next day, Mackenzie gives them one of the many abandoned cars from the nursing home and a gun for protection. After Mackenzie hugs them one last time, Amina and the family leave. A few hours later, while crossing the countryside, John notices Nathan looks sad and suggests playing road trip games. Suddenly, a bullet shatters the car window and hits Amina, killing her instantly. Several men in the bushes keep firing at them, being careful not to hit the engine because they want to steal the car. John immediately moves to the back of the car and starts shooting back, killing each robber one by one as they get closer. When only one is left, John runs out of ammo, but luckily Allison has a second gun and shoots the last man before he can harm them. After taking a moment to comfort each other, the family digs a hole and buries Amina. John says a few prayers as a final goodbye, and Nathan is curious because the prayers sound like wishing someone well when that person is already dead. A few hours later, the family reaches a vast desert area and realizes this is what remains of the sea. At least this means they won't need a boat. As the journey continues, they see many ships and containers on the ground, including an intact Spanish galleon. A few miles later, they find the road blocked by a line of cars and survivors standing still. It turns out there is a giant chasm between England and France that can only be crossed by walking on a very dangerous rope bridge. Nathan is terrified and says he cannot do it, so John goes first to set an example and encourage him. The whole family starts walking on the rope very slowly and carefully. When John coughs, he nearly slips but quickly regains his balance. Suddenly, a very strong wind starts blowing and pushes the bridge, forcing everyone to hold on tighter to avoid falling. Luckily, the wind stops quickly, and the family can continue moving until they reach a rock in the middle of the chasm. 2 ladders connect the rock to the other side of the chasm. While the family takes a moment to rest, an earthquake hits the area but no one falls. The trio climbs the ladder and starts crawling. However, they have to stop and hold on when another earthquake hits. Rocks fall from the walls of the chasm and soon the rope bridge breaks, sending many people to their deaths. On the remaining ladder, a man sees the bridge is gone and turns back, shoving another person off the chasm in the process. That ladder starts to slide, so the man jumps and lands on Nathan just before the rock crumbles, causing the second ladder and some people to also fall. The desperate man cannot keep his balance and slips to his death, but Nathan grabs the edge of the ladder, and his parents help him climb up. The rest of the rock is also collapsing, so the family quickly climbs and finally reaches France safely. Now the journey continues on foot, but no matter how far they walk they only see wasteland. Suddenly, they hear a gunshot and find Dennis pointing a gun at them. He lowers his gun when he realizes they are not robbers and offers to take them home. A few minutes later, the group reaches northern France. Dennis now lives in an old factory, where he powers electricity with a car engine, which is itself powered by solar panels. He introduces them to his daughter Camille and his wife, who is mute and in a wheelchair because radiation affected her nervous system. During dinner, Dennis learns that John's family is trying to reach the crater and warns them that the area is extremely dangerous. Only 2 cities are still standing and people are fighting for control of the crater, including the remnants of the French army. Camille takes Nathan to her room and shows him all the cool things Dennis has collected from other buildings. In return, Nathan shows her his star-covered bedsheet. The next morning, Dennis gives John a map and points out the least dangerous route. He also shares the name of a friend in the military and gives John an old photo so they can prove they know him, which will hopefully get them help. Suddenly, Dennis breaks down crying as he begs John to take Camille with them. He wishes he could take her to the crater himself, but he has to stay and care for his wife. John hesitates but Allison agrees. Then Camille tearfully says goodbye to her parents and leaves with John's family in Dennis's truck. After a few hours of driving, Allison notices the children are in a bad mood and decides to stop so they can rest. John starts a game of Would You Choose and this lifts everyone's spirits. Suddenly, several vehicles appear on the road and a group of soldiers surrounds them. Camille mentions her father's military friend and convinces the soldiers to help them through the area. When night falls, the group reaches a war zone where the army is fighting rebels. A soldier guides them to go behind the front line so they can sneak through the forest without being detected. They have to stop moving when something explodes near them, but then they continue and cross a barbed wire fence to reach a more dangerous area. Now they have to run as fast as they can to avoid bullets and explosions happening all around. Soldiers are dying everywhere and the family even sees a man on fire. Their guide calls the command post to report that he is leading civilians, and his comrade tells him to keep moving while they provide cover. The group continues forward and finally reaches the trenches, where John nearly collapses from coughing. As they walk through the trenches, the family has to dodge many corpses and witness more soldiers being shot. Finally they reach a ladder and the guide leads them out of the forest, telling them to keep walking straight until they find a camp. In the morning, the group finally finds the military settlement. Camille recognizes some mountains that were never there before, and John concludes they must be close to the crater. When they ask a soldier about Dennis's friend, they learn he is dead. The other soldiers do not want to help them, so John tells them he is dying and only wants to protect his family. One man takes pity on them and arranges a spot on a bus. John's family and a few other survivors set off on the bus that will take them to the crater. However, the trip is interrupted when something explodes on the road. Suddenly, the bus is surrounded by rebels, so a soldier steps out to fight them, but he is immediately shot. Then a rebel also kills the driver and forces all the refugees off the bus. John pushes his family out but stays behind to tackle the rebel and start fighting him. Another armed man tries to help his comrade, but a refugee hits him over the head with a rock, knocking him out. Inside the bus, 2 gunshots ring out. John steps out victorious with a gun but also reveals he has been shot. Everyone gets back on the bus and Nathan keeps pressing on John's wound while Allison drives. A few minutes later, they reach the top of a new mountain and the family helps John walk until they find the crater. The rumors turn out to be true. The crater is a beautiful place with fertile, unpolluted land, perfect for starting over. Just then John collapses, and the family gathers around him to say their final goodbyes before he closes his eyes. Everyone cries while Nathan repeats the prayers as a farewell to his father.